Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. We're talking with a mega successful real estate guy about unlocking your brain's hidden power. How do you train your brain? Can you actually get smarter? And how do you control fear for more success and achievement in your life? Today on Get Rich Education. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They provided you with more loans than anyone. It's where I got my last few loans, and they finance single-family income property up to fourplexes. They're the number one lender for both beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and you'll end up with your custom plan for expanding your cash flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Frisco, Texas to Fresno, California, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education, as we take a break from current events this week and talk about something that can help you for a lifetime. Consider something remarkable. Every human being enters the world with an unfinished brain. Conversely, dolphins are born already able to swim. Giraffes learn how to stand within hours. But us humans, we're basically helpless for years. Now, that might seem like a human limitation, but you know something? This actually signals your greatest advantage. Baby animals develop quickly because their brains wire up according to a pre-programmed routine, but that preparedness trades off against flexibility. See, imagine if some hapless rhinoceros found itself on the Arctic tundra or in downtown Tokyo. Well, it would have no capacity to adapt or thrive. That rhino would die. In contrast, as humans, we can learn to thrive in different environments. Instead of arriving with everything hardwired like animals, your human brain is shaped by life experience, so it's live wired. You have this cognitive adaptability that other species don't. Since you have this, consider that you then also have the same 168 hours in a week as Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, the wealthiest man in the world. Do you think it's because perhaps he was born with more? No, Bezos was born the son of a 16-year-old mom and a deadbeat dad, and there are stories like that all over the place. Apple's Steve Jobs and Oracle's Larry Ellison were both adopted. These guys aren't necessarily any smarter than you either, and you largely have the same access to information that they do too. It was also this way, say, 100 years ago. John D. Rockefeller and oil, Thomas Edison and the light bulb. Well, they had the same amount of time as everyone else around them. They got more done. And excuses are often just lies that you tell yourself. In life, what you do become are your expectations. That's what you turn into. You become your expectations. Rather than building up excuses for yourself, which are limits, you can instead build up your expectations then. Average minds find comfort in being just like everybody else. And conversely, achievers, they fear being like everyone else. Now, I don't think that I'm a great achiever yet, hopefully someday, like some of those people that I named, but I do fear being like everyone else. I resist that. I don't want to conform. More than 15 years ago, I moved from Pennsylvania to Anchorage. That was deemed as unusual by my peers, and I also didn't know anyone in Anchorage at that time either, nobody. When it was time to buy my first property, as you know, I made it that seminal fourplex building where I lived in one unit and rented out the other three. That was another non-conforming behavior. Even this very show that you're listening to at this moment, I launched it in 2014 from a dining room table. definitely non-conforming behavior at that time. Talking to myself in a little room, few people even understood what I was doing at all then. Well, your exceptional behavior, it's not going to be those three exact things that I just mentioned. It's going to be something else. If you want exceptional things out of life, you've got to then simply do exceptional things and harbor that fear inside you of being normal. Instead, many people just kind of let life happen to them and they aren't intentional. If you keep conforming, you'll be just like everyone else. One piece of advice that I've heard a few times in my life is that you should move at the speed of instruction. And now for a while, I didn't understand that. I didn't see why. I thought, well, if I move at the speed of instruction, well, then I could quickly get in over my head and fail. And then, I learned that's exactly the point, because when I move at the speed of instruction, I fail faster and then I learn sooner. This applies whether you're uncertain about buying your first property or, say, taking things to a whole new level and syndicating agricultural land. When you move at the speed of instruction by acting and you fail, well, then what happened is that you got an education, an experience, and you lost money. When you go buy an educational course, you get education and you lose money to the tuition fee, but you did not get experience like you would have by acting. When you move at the speed of instruction, you learn by doing, and you know what? Hey, you might not even fail either. Then you acted and profited and you got experience. When we think about training your brain, we live in a complex world where really everything today is so specialized that it often makes sense for you to bring in specialists and not learn everything about everything. And you outsource some of your work so that you can grow, whether you bring in a real estate attorney alongside you for a big deal, or you outsource your management operations to a professional property manager that has systems and already knows that landlord-tenant law. When you expand and build your team, really, one of the best questions to ask yourself along the way is just the simple three-word question, who, not how. Who can do this for you? Not how do I do this? Not how do I become a real estate attorney? Not how do I become the landlord? When it comes to growth, the question, who, not how, that will help you surround yourself with some pretty amazing professionals. Now, who, not how, creates a rub for some people. Many people have the DIYer, the do-it-yourselfer mentality ingrained within them, maybe because in the United States, independence just seems to be this sort of American virtue. Your brain is built to progress, adapt, and grow, so let's talk more about how to train your brain for success with this week's guest. This week's guest authored 2 New York Times best-selling books and appearing in 10 movies, including the smash hit The Secret. He's also got a new book, not called Exercise, but called Inner Size, the new science to unlock your brain's hidden power, and it's already become a #1 bestseller in psychology on Amazon. He is a real estate guy. He has built 5 multi-million-dollar companies, including taking one public on NASDAQ, and he grew the real estate company Remax of Indiana to 1,200 sales associates and nearly $5 billion a year in sales. You've probably seen him in media and on stages worldwide. He's been on Larry King Live, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, and Anderson Cooper 360, to name a few. And now he's on Get Rich Education. Welcome to the show, John Assaraf.
It is great to be on with you.
Before we talk about success and wealth mindset, John, our listeners will be interested to know that you've long been a successful real estate guy. So tell us about that.
When I was 19 years old, my life was on the wrong train, on the wrong track, picking up speed, and not sure when I was going to hit a proverbial wall, but I was introduced to an amazing man, a mentor he became. His name was Alan Brown, and he happened to have 7 real estate offices in Toronto. He was a developer and an investor in real estate. And at the ripe young age of 19, he agreed to mentor me. Wow. And so I started to understand the real estate game 40 years ago and started buying investment properties when I was 22. It was the first time I was able to afford it. So I've been involved in residential real estate, commercial, industrial. And so I've got a good background to real estate and understanding a little bit about it. And then I built Remax of Indiana to 85 offices many years later. Well, probably about 6 years later, I started it and had 1,200 salespeople doing $4.5 billion a year in sales. So I've got a good grasp on the game.
That's astounding. And the genesis of a lot of that success, it sounds like you did have the good fortune to get a mentor around you early. And a lot of times when you're really young, when you're only 19 years old, the thing that might attract a good mentor to you is you having something like a good attitude and you appearing as teachable to a prospective mentor.
Well, at the time, interestingly enough, I didn't have a good attitude. I was getting in trouble with the law. I was involved in a small little street gang from the age of 13 to 17, and my life was an absolute mess. And so more than anything, I was a mess. I was in a state of despair. I was in a state of fear, and I wasn't totally aware how awful my attitude was. But this man was able to see past that, and he saw potential. And he was willing to invest in me. And what's interesting was I like to share a story, around this. And that is when he asked me, what some of my goals were and what some of my dreams were, I had no idea. I just told him, I said, listen, I'd like to be able to just make enough money to move out of my parents' home. I'd like to buy a car. And he said, well, that's all basic and that's great, but what are some of your bigger goals? And I said, I didn't have any. And so he had me stop for just a moment, and he gave me these sheets where he asked me to write down at what age I wanted to retire, what my net worth was going to be. I was 19. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, retire. I'm just starting. I'm just like, out of school starting. I'm working in a factory right now. Retire. My father's still working. He can't afford to retire. He never will be able to retire. He had me write down some goals for health and wealth and relationships and career and travel and fun and experiences I wanted. And then when I finished writing down on this sheets of paper, he looked at it and said, that's pretty good. Where'd you get these ideas? I said, well, I like watching the TV show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Hey.
And that was an old show, when I was a kid. And he said, well, every one of these goals is very achievable. He says, I've achieved all of them and then some. But I'm going to ask you a question that's going to determine whether it's possible for you or not. I said, sure, fire away. And he said to me, he said, John, he says, are you interested in achieving these goals or are you committed? And I said, what do you mean, am I interested or am I committed? He said, well, son, he said, if you're interested, you'll do what's easy and convenient. Yeah. He says, if you're interested, you're going to keep using the stories and reasons, excuses, how you did poorly in school and you fell behind and you got in trouble with the teachers all the time and the other kids and you were in the principal's office and you weren't smart enough because you failed math and English in the same year and the only thing you were good at was gym class. He says, if you are committed, however, you'll let go of those stories and excuses and reasons. You'll upgrade your self-image to match the goals you want to achieve. You'll develop the beliefs and the habits of somebody who can achieve those goals. And he says, then you'll pay the price of discipline to become the type of man that can achieve them. And he said, if you don't pay the price of discipline today, you're going to pay the price of regret later on. I later found out that was a Jim Rohn quote.
Right. It's every human either pays the price of discipline or the price of regret.
Yeah. I said to him, well, Mr. Brown, I said, well, I guess, I'm committed. And then he said, great. In that case, son, I'll be your mentor. And he reached out his hand and he shook mine. And I was like, wow, that's great. What does that mean? And because I never had a mentor, before, I didn't even know what it was. He says, well, son, I can share with you the steps to achieve every one of those goals. I can share with you what to do and what not to do and why and how to do it. I said, well, I'm totally down for that. He says, nobody's ever mentored me. He says, great. Well, I need you to move from Montreal to Toronto. I said, what? I don't have any money. I don't have a car. I'm working in Montreal.
That is earth-shaking when you're 19.
Yeah. And he said, well, are you interested or are you committed? I said, I'm committed, but he says, there you go. You're already giving me excuses. He says, as soon as you use the word but and you give me an excuse, then you're not focusing on how you can. And so I said, well, fine. I'll move to Toronto. I had no idea how. He says, great. And my brother was with me at lunch. He said, well, Johnny, he says, you can live with me for a short period of time until you get situated. And I said, great. Okay, I'll move to Toronto. And I was being a little bit of a jerk, but I said, yes, okay, I'll do it. In 5 weeks, there's a real estate course that starts at Humber College. I want you to enroll in the course, and the fee is $500. I go, you want me to go back to school and you want me to put $500 for a course? I hate school. I failed so many classes in school. I'm terrible in school. I'm really not smart enough to do this stuff in school, and I don't have the money. He goes, oh, there you go again. You're already coming up with all the reasons why you can't and why it won't work.
Yeah.
And so he just kept doing this to me on a couple of things. I said, fine. I've got like $60 saved up. I'll figure out how to get the rest. And he goes, now you're learning. And so my brother said, well, I've got an extra $100 I can give you. Maybe dad can give you some money. Maybe our sister can give you some money. And about 4 weeks later, I moved to Toronto. I took the train with one piece of luggage. I enrolled in the real estate course from 9 to 5 that started on April the 5th, 1980. And on June 20th, 1980, I passed the real estate exam and I became a licensed real estate agent.
And you know these are transformative times when you remember the exact date.
The reason I remember the date is because when I passed the test after going to school every day and actually attending and paying attention and studying, it was the first test that I passed without cheating in several years. Because I did that, I built a little bit of self-confidence in myself.
Yeah.
And then, I went into the real estate office every day, wearing a suit. And he had me doing 1 hour a day of upgrading my knowledge and skills of sales and marketing and going to homes and looking at homes and becoming educated and leveling up my confidence and my certainty level. And so the beginning of my real estate career came with a lot of personal development training around what to do, what not to do, how to think, how to develop the beliefs, etc.
As they say, the difference between who you are and where you want to be is what you do. And you've got to begin with the end in mind. And most 19-year-olds aren't thinking of anything beyond what's mom going to make for dinner tonight. And it really starts with asking yourself a better question like that first mentor did. Are you interested or are you committed?
You got it. Yeah, and that was the defining shift in my life. That was the question, the answer, and then the behavior that followed that changed the trajectory of my life. One man, one question, one answer, everything changed. And I've been teaching that to my students. I've been writing about it. I've built a few companies over the last 30 or so years with that philosophy of if you're interested, you do what's convenient. When you're committed, you do whatever it takes, ethically and professionally, of course.
Now, of course, it's not all about mindset with getting a desired result, but I think most would agree that it certainly starts with mindset. Sometimes if a person is talking about another person and says that person has everything it takes, all he just needs to do is get the right mindset. I would submit to you that we don't want to say it's just a mindset problem because mindset is not a little thing. It all begins there. So how can one adopt and cultivate that right mindset to get that end that they want?
A couple of things we should, unpack. And so number one, what is mindset?
Yeah.
Is mindset just about positivity and a positive attitude? Positive mental attitude, as Norman Vincent Peale said, or Napoleon Hill said, in his book, Think and Grow Rich, you become what you think about most. No, because most young men at my age, at 19, when I was reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, I was thinking about women. And so I was afraid I was going to become a woman. But mindset has got a lot to do with, obviously, your attitude, but it has to do with your beliefs also. It has to do with your perspective. It has to do with your philosophies. Attitude is there where we talk about beliefs. Now we're getting into the domain that I have developed an expertise at over the last 20 years, and that is the neuroscience of beliefs, the neuropsychology of beliefs and perspectives. And then we get into the domain of your habits, which drive your behavior. So it's a combination of your mindset plus your skill set around being able to manage your emotions, your skill set as it relates to the goal that you want to achieve. And I share with people that whether you're playing sports or academia or music or anything else, there's a variety of different levels that you can play at. So there's the kindergarten level where you're just having fun. You're just playing around. You're really, just looking to laugh and play. But then there's the grade school and high school and university, and then the pro level, and the all-star level, and the Hall of Fame level. And each one of those levels requires a totally different skill set and level of mental and emotional and physical fortitude and skill that all coalesce together at the level that you're playing at.
And you've got to have that belief, whether you're trying to be the starting wide receiver on a Division I college football team or own a 50-unit real estate portfolio. You can't be committed if you don't have that belief first.
That's exactly right. And so there are two types of beliefs we now know from a neuroscience perspective. And in my book, Inner Size, my newest best-selling books, I go deep into understanding the explicit beliefs are the beliefs that we can declare. So I can ask you, hey, do you believe that you have what it takes to build a great real estate portfolio? And you go, oh yeah, of course I believe that. But what if you have an implicit belief, a subconscious belief that says, but you don't have the knowledge or the skill. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You're not worthy enough. What if you have opposing beliefs? Then what happens is the fear or doubt or uncertainty center in the brain, which is all one and the same, actually subconsciously activates and deactivates your motivational center in your brain. It deactivates the motor cortex or behavioral part of your brain. So even though you have these explicit, grandiose beliefs on the outside, if you have opposing or limiting beliefs deeper in on the inside, then you will not take inspired, consistent action, and you will sabotage your success through either negative self-talk, disempowering emotions, or stories, reasons, or excuses why you can't or why you're not. We call that dissonance in the brain. And when there's dissonance in the brain, then we don't take inspired action. And so all the work that I've done in building any one of my companies or working with my private clients, whether they're professional athletes, CEOs, entrepreneurs, is creating neural coherence between their conscious, goal-setting, goal-desiring brain and their subconscious, which is actually responsible for 98% of all of their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors.
I think so much of it has to do with how one sees themselves. And if one sees themselves as being a success, that begins to show through on the outside with confidence, and others can feel that. But it really begins with how you feel about yourself and how you think others perceive you.
Yes and no. And so let me explain. So there really is this division and these different masks that we wear. So there's the mask that I want you to see. There's the mask that you see, and there's the mask that I really see. And so when people have this self-image or identity, it could be fractured into a variety of different identities. And so it's the subconscious identity that's really, really critical for us to understand. Whenever somebody is not achieving their goals and dreams, one of the things that I always look at, there's only 4 reasons that people will not achieve the goals and dreams they set for themselves. And one of them happens to be their hidden self-image. So there's an image that people portray. Okay, so we see a lot of, I'll just use, musicians as an example, just because I read of another one recently that, had all this success on the outside, but was devastated and turmoiled on the inside.
Because most musicians appear extremely confident when they're performing on stage.
Well, that's right. And they have to show this external image because they are entertaining. They are like a Hollywood actor or actress, and they're aware of it. Some of them revert to drugs or alcohol or pills or other addictions to try to create this sense of calmness when there's actual chaos going on. And so when we talk about, you have to see yourself, you have to see yourself at the conscious level, but you also have to integrate that with your hidden self-image. And everybody has, what I call, and I talk about this in my book, Inner Size, their Einstein part of their brain that's using their, imagination and deductive reasoning to say, I want this, I can achieve this, I can do this, and here's all the ways that I can. But then we also have, Frankenstein's monster, part of our brain that's the inner self-critic that says, but you don't deserve this, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're too worthy, you're too young, you're too old, you're too Asian, you're Caucasian, you don't have the money, you don't know how to do this. What if you fail? What if you succeed? What if you disappoint yourself? What if you're embarrassed? What if you're ashamed? What if you're ridiculed? See where I'm going with all of this? And unless we can integrate all of it together, then we don't achieve what we're capable of achieving. We achieve what we are conditioned to achieve, and we achieve the set points that we have in our brains that work almost identically to a guidance missile system or a thermostat in a room. And that's called a cybernetic mechanism.
The Einstein part of the brain. I want to ask John if anyone can tap into that and basically get smarter. We also want to talk about fear, such a strong human motivator. When we come back, you're listening to Get Rich Education. Our guest is John Assaraf. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Property investors can get killed with maintenance costs. That's less likely when you buy brand new construction. Let me tell you about JWB Real Estate Capital in bustling Jacksonville, Florida. They pioneered the build-to-rent model where you can invest in new construction, turnkey rental property. That's why JWB was featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. To learn more and see inventory, start now at newconstructionturnkey.com. Finally, with Total Control Financial, get checkbook control of your existing 401k and IRA funds to invest in real estate. Yes, you can move your retirement money into your own checking account, but you must avoid the little-known tax that you'll get hammered with in a self-directed IRA. Instead, start your QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
This is the Real Wealth Network's Kathy Fettke, and you are listening to the always valuable Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking with two-time New York Times best-selling author John Assaraf about mindset and what it takes to achieve success. John, I think something that everyone wonders deep down, and I do too to some extent, is can you actually increase your intelligence? You mentioned tapping into the Einstein part of the brain. Can a person actually make themselves smarter and train their brain to actually get more intelligent?
Well, the answer is absolutely, unequivocally yes. When we talk about the Einstein part of our brain, we know that all the new research is showing that left prefrontal cortex is what they're calling that Einstein, which is the piece of your neocortex that's been developing for probably about the last 50,000 years. And it's just above your left eye, just to let people know where that is. And so when we talk about intelligence, what we also know is there's multiple types of intelligence. There is spatial intelligence, there's spiritual intelligence, there's mathematical intelligence, there's musical intelligence, there's empathetic intelligence. And so what we do know is people have different levels of intelligence. So IQ is not considered the only means of intelligence anymore. Imagination is just as important for some people as IQ. That's part one. Part two, what we do know is that when we activate Einstein and we start using our imagination to think about how can we achieve X, Y, or Z. What knowledge do I need? What skills do I need? What emotional or mental state do I need to be in? And the answer is in a mindful, aware state. That increases intelligence. When we learn how to meditate and create the coherence between the salience network in our brain, the executive network in our brain, and the default mode network in our brain, three of the key networks in our brain. When we move into a meditative state and we create coherence between those three networks, then we actually are able to increase IQ. We're able to increase our immune system. We're able to have a totally different perspective in a calm state where we can respond versus a reactive state. So in a roundabout way, the answer is absolutely we can increase IQ on all fronts. Now, one of the things I learned from one of my mentors many years ago is, if you really want to get smarter in life, strengthen your strengths and manage your weaknesses. He said, don't get strong at the stuff you're weak at or you're not good at. Get strong at the stuff you're really strong at. And it goes back to the martial arts story. I can't remember if it was Bruce Lee who was involved in this story. Are you afraid of the man who does 10,000 moves one time or one move 10,000 times?
Yeah.
And the answer was the man who does one move 10,000 times, because now he or the woman, she has developed the expertise, the precision of being outstanding at one thing. And here's what we know. There are people who are highly intelligent from a scholastic perspective that are on the street homeless without any money. And we know people who have, a very little formal education that are billionaires or multimillionaires. And so every single human being has got incredible potential. And when we start to focus the most powerful biocomputer in the entire universe, your brain, we're able to achieve things that we've only dreamed of. But the key, and this I often say, is one of the reasons I wrote my newest book was we have the most powerful biocomputer in the known universe, our brain, but nobody has a user's manual for it. And then nobody has learned how to practice strengthening their core neuromuscles. Nobody's practiced. We practice, maybe exercising for our physical muscles and our internal organs. But what about our brain? What about innercising our brain so that our core neuromuscles of confidence and certainty and imagination and focus and awareness and mindfulness and beliefs and habits get strengthened in an empowering way? Can we do that? And the answer is absolutely yes. But without a process, it's really hard. So we just go about our days, our weeks, our months, our years doing more of the same. And now we've learned more about the human brain in the last 20 years than we have in the history of our species. 2.5 million years, humans have walked in one capacity or another from Homo erectus to now on this earth. And we're finally understanding how our brain works better than ever before. And I plead to everybody, why not innercise your brain so that you can develop more focus, more certainty, more confidence in yourself as you upgrade your knowledge and your skills and you increase your IQ and your EQ.
Which was remarkable with the level of sophistication in society today that we are still just getting to understand this brain, something that we've all carried inside ourselves as humans for eons. When it comes to tapping into the potential of the brain and finding that calm state that we need, I think fear is such a strong emotion and it's such a strong motivator of human behavior. And we really need to tap into our brain's ultimate capability, it seems, to help dispel this fear that we have in our lives. In fact, a lot of times fear of loss can trump triumph of gain. I would say fear is one of the strongest human motivators that there is out there. In fact, I would contend that fear is the primary emotion of what keeps employees reporting into work every day. So how can we cope with that most basic human emotion of fear?
It's a great question, and I want people to understand something, and then I'll answer the question directly. Fear is a subconscious trigger based on the hierarchy of how your brain works. So if we think about why do we react so vehemently to fear? And how do we turn fear into our fuel for success instead of having it paralyze us into safety? And
that's a great way to think of it. How do we turn it into fuel?
Right. So number one is the hierarchy of the brain is safety above all else, right? If you were to strip away, and forgive me for the gross image, but if you were to strip away your skin and strip away your bones and strip away all of your organs, you'd have this brain with a nervous system, right? And its sole job is survival and safety. So billions of years of evolution, millions of years of this human species, all working towards one common thing, survival and avoidance of pain. So we have this highly, highly, highly developed organism, not an organ, it's an organism that is growing and learning and adapting every second of every day of your life. And all incoming information from the outside world through your physical sense of hear, see, smell, taste, and touch, or any thoughts that you have using that Einstein part of your brain and the imagination is run through this filter, okay, called your brain and the fear center or the amygdala, and it goes to the memory bank and says, is there anything in this thought, this idea, this vision, this goal, or my outside environment that could compromise my safety? Now, from a brain's perspective, it's looking for financial safety, emotional safety, mental safety, physical safety. And if there is anything in your brain's memory bank that is real or imagined danger, that could affect your safety, it alerts you in the form of activating this signal that we call fear. And the signal releases cortisol and norepinephrine and adrenaline, so you can do one of 4 things: fight it, run away, freeze, or faint. Those are the 4 reactions that are automatic before you're even aware of it, that we are biologically wired to react. And so fear is not your enemy. Fear is your friend. It's a highly sensitive electromagnetic switching station that analyzes information, incoming or thought information, so that you, when you're in a state of awareness, can respond instead of react. Firefighters learn how to do this. Navy SEALs learn how to do this. Astronauts learn how to do this. Police officers learn how to do this. Highly successful investors and CEOs learn how to do this. But the average person has no idea what to do when this uneasy, unpleasant emotion, the energy that's in motion because of the neurochemicals, are running through their bloodstream. And so guess what they do? They react like the masses. And so the reason I like to give that visual explanation is because if you were driving down the street and your car dash light went on, you wouldn't take a hammer and smash the light on your dash.
Right.
Oh, maybe I'm low on tire air. Or maybe the hood's open. Maybe the trunk is open. Maybe there's a low in fluid. It's a signal. Now, when the signal is there because of this highly evolved mechanism, our job is to be able to assess, is this real or potential danger? Have I got the skills, the resources to mitigate any risk? And then what should my next steps be? That is a trained response, Keith. It's not something that the average person just has automatically. So we will always react based on the highest level of training we've received.
John, and I think it can be said that when one seeks growth in their life, it makes sense to leave your comfort zone and go toward the fear. That's how one achieves progress. So rather than fear being a deterrent, fear, therefore, should actually be our guide if we want that growth.
It should be our guide. And if we do it following a process of having the right perspective with the right response, because we have the right process. You shouldn't go walk on a tightrope unless you have the skill to walk on a tightrope or you have a safety net. And so in the absence of skill, I do not agree that you should just go forward. In the absence of skill, I believe you should get the skill as you then make the decision to take action. So a perfect example, right, where we're in very, very tumultuous times right now, as everybody knows, around the world. And so the stock market, has lost all of its gains in the last 2 weeks that it gained in all of 2019.
That's right.
And so should somebody who doesn't know how to invest in the stock market just jump in right now and invest? No, absolutely not. Without knowing what to invest in, how to mitigate your risk, and what kind of perspective to have, short-term or long-term, there's a high likelihood that you will get burned. I do not agree that people should just jump in. I believe that people should say, okay, there's an opportunity here right now. I'm afraid because I have doubt and fear. That's okay. Doubt and fear is okay. Uncertainty is okay. But then say, well, what can I do? What do I need to learn? Who can I get help from? And then what should I do to be able to get into the game and make smart decisions and mitigate my risk?
That is a good way to think about breaking down the fear one step at a time. John, it's been great chatting about mindset and how one can use their brain for more growth and more success. If someone wants to learn more about you and your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Thank you. If they want to find out about my newest book, Inner Size, INNERCISE, so Exercise for Your Body, Inner Size for Your Brain, they can hop on Amazon and pick it up. It's about $12. And I also am giving people 8 brain training audios so they have more focus, more confidence, more certainty, and more awareness as part of getting the book right now, which is valued at $197. I also have a following on my Facebook fan page. I do a little training there every Tuesday morning. Then I'm on Instagram at John Assaraf, and I'm also on Twitter. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then my company website is myneurogym.com, MYNEUROGYM.com. We do a lot of free training. We do a lot of work in the community to help people strengthen their mindset and remove the obstacles that are holding them back. We have a lot of brain training programs, but then they can get a hold of some of our free stuff first and see what they like.
John Assaraf, it's been great having you here on the show.
Thank you, my friend. Great being with you.
Big thanks to John Assaraf today. Check out his book called Inner Size. Sometimes it helps to take a different approach. Rather than asking a successful real estate pro about their deal flow, ask about how they think. You can find all those resources that John mentioned and more at GetRichEducation.com/293. Since this is episode 293, while you're at GetRichEducation.com, be sure to sign up for the valuable yet completely free Don't Quit Your Daydream letter. That's our email letter that's so much more than a newsletter. It's sent about weekly lately, and you'll find more than just the latest and most important real estate investing news, all filtered for you, along with my commentary on it. You will find opportunities in that letter that you truly won't find anywhere else in the world. Sometimes I even slip in some exact addresses and photos of available income properties in there with their prices and terms and everything else. Another example of how there is material there that you won't find anywhere else in the world is that, as our readers know, a few weeks ago you learned through the letter that I'm hiring here at Get Rich Education, and dozens of you submitted your resume for our operations administrator position here. That's actually the right-hand person at GRE that will work closely with me. I was pretty impressed with all the resumes that rolled in and were sent to our hiring manager. A number of MBAs applied, a Stanford graduate, and in fact, a swimmer that set 3 world swimming records. Sorry, I could only hire one person, but we keep growing, and the next hire that we make, we'll probably put it in the letter again. So I'd encourage you to get the Don't Quit Your Daydream letter at GetRichEducation.com. You never know what opportunity you'll see in there. It's also a nice supplement to the show here. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and I'll be back with you next week when we have 2 familiar friends on the show. Whatever you do until then, don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.